part 1 of the WCG Era Series. We look back at a revolutionary period in WCG history as the Rabih's 11 era had begun. One of the most anticipated series in WCG history had plenty of spite, a series where rivalries reached boiling point, but ultimately a series that to this day remains the most one-sided result ever seen at the WCG, as the Blues would establish their Test Series dynasty and condemn the Reds to unwanted WCG history. This is the story of the Season 4 Test Series, Brendan's 11 against Rabih's 11, the Whitewash. The story begins at the end of the previous Test Series, with Gavin Merrifield knocking over Pat McGregor. The Blues had secured a 2-0 series victory against Matt's 11, which would subsequently see Matt's 11 skipper Matt White stepping down, which opened the door for a new challenger. Up stepped Rabih El-Basha. El-Basha was Scott's vice-captain in the Season 3 Test Series victory, but El-Basha decided it was time to go it alone. But the big question remained, what side would Matt White be on? Rabih made his feelings clear.
Matt White, please, please, Matt White, fuck, Matt White, he gives himself a fright to free. Using Matt White, the greatest myth in history.
And with a handshake, the deal was done. Matt White would join Brendan's 11 in a historic move.
Rabs, we'll beat you 3-0. We'll beat you 3-0. Okay. 250 is the bet for the series. We win 3-0. He pays me 250. Anything other than that, it's his 250.
So the day arrived and the time for talk was over. Things wouldn't begin well for El-Basha, as the Blues won the toss and elected to bat first on a good pitch. So Matt White and Hamid El-Basha made the jump over to the Blues, with the Reds also having a fairly strong side, handing a debut to a man we see a lot more in years to come, Ryan Schaefer. So a new era at the WCG was ready to begin. The Reds the newest challengers to the Test Series throne, but dethroning the Kings of the backyard would not prove easy, and so things would prove on the opening morning of the Test match, as Scott looked in a mood. Some wayward Reds bowling helped Scott get away to a flyer, and before you knew it, the Blues skipper was marching towards another half-century at the WCG. The Rabih's 11 cause was not helped in the field, as the pressure began to build on the Reds. Some poor fielding and a dropped catch were to the detriment of the Reds, which helped the score tick along for the Blues. A thick outside edge to the bowling of Ryan Schaefer went to the boundary, and the Blues skipper went to 50 to make the first statement of this year's series. And with the Reds in desperate need for a wicket, up stepped Pat McGregor, who dismissed Scott at the WCG yet again, as the Blues skipper's first dig of the series was brought to an end on 66. And then a collapse for the Blues. Mark Pasterfield gone for a duck, although replays showed he was unlucky to be given out, with his bat hitting the ground. And when Matt White top-edged Robert Leonard over the fence also for a duck, the Blues had lost 4 for 8, to the delight of the Red skipper. It would take handy contributions from the Blues lower order to get them over the 100 mark. First Josh Bolling, then Gavin Merrifield, then finally Hamid El-Basha, all doing their part. Alex Steppin would be the last man dismissed, and the Rabih's 11 fight back with the ball was complete. So the Blues would lose all their 8 wickets for 40 runs, which saw them being bowled out for 111, a decent first innings total. However, being at one stage no wicket for 71, they'd surely be a tad disappointed. It was time for the Reds to reply, and one of the most iconic moments in WCG history. Rabih El-Basha dismissed for 1, with what can only be described as a swat to his younger brother. And Hamid, who was dismissed by Rabih in the first innings, would get his revenge to his obvious delight. It would be a top order collapse for the Reds. Firstly, George Pineros bowled by Josh Bowling, and then Nathan Hancock dismissed by the Blues skipper as the Reds slumped to 3 for 11. That would bring Michael Johnson to the crease, and with an average of 5 at the WCG, it wouldn't have exactly inspired positivity in the Reds lineup, but he would play one of the knocks of his career with a combination of placement and brutality, punishing the Blues bowlers. He would play a steady hand for the Reds to get their first innings back on track and take the fight back to the Blues. He would have to navigate some hostile stuff from Matt White. But Johnson was up to the challenge, and his knock of 40 breathed new life into the Reds' innings. His knock would come to an end via the Blues skipper, who went bang bang in the same over, firstly bringing Johnson's timely knock to an end, and knocking over Todd Lavin 2 balls later to have Rabih's 11 5 for 55. It would take lower order cameos to get them up towards the Brandon's 11 total. Firstly, Robert Leonard, who contributed with 13, before he skied one over the fence to Gavin Merrifield. And then the debutant Ryan Schaefer, who would stamp his mark on this series with a swashbuckling 30 to push the Reds to just about parity with the Blues' first innings total. However, with the first innings lead in sight, he would hold out to Josh Bowling over the fence. And as he was last year to end the Test series, McGregor clean bowled by Merrifield to end the innings. So honours just about even at the end of the first innings. Rabih's 11 bowled out for 105, just 6 shy of Brandon's 11's first innings total, and it was all to play for as we moved into the second innings. A change at the top for the second innings, as Scott moved himself down the order, which would trigger another collapse for the Blues. Pasterfield would pad up to Robert Leonard to be dismissed for 1, and when Daniel Hancock was bowled with the very next delivery, the Blues had slumped to 3 for 13. That would bring Matt White to the crease, who would steady the ship for the men in blue. He would begin his innings in aggressive fashion to take the fight to the Reds bowlers and swing the momentum back towards his side. However, his knock would come to an end on 27, being dismissed by Robert Leonard for the second time in the Test match. And when Josh Bowling padded up to Michael Johnson for 7, the Blues had slumped to 5 for 50. But that would bring Gavin Merrifield to the crease, and what would prove a regular occurrence throughout the series, he began the rescue act for the Blues. He would make his way to 34 before McGregor would get his revenge. And when Stepien was dismissed for 1, the Blues were 7 for 87 with a lead of 93. That would finally bring the Blues skipper to the crease, who picked up where he left off in the first innings to push the Blues lead in excess of 100. He plundered the Reds bowling to all parts of the WCG. Scott would make his second half century for the Test match to put the Blues in a near impregnable position. He would finally be dismissed for 67 thanks to a smart catch by Ryan Schaefer, and the Blues' second innings was finally brought to a close. So strong middle to lower order contributions from the Blues propelled them to a total of 158 in their second innings, which set the Reds a target of 165 for victory, which would be a record chase at the WCG. The Reds would barely get out of second gear in the chase. McGregor propelled to the top of the order, knocked over in the opening over, and a brilliant one-handed diving catch from Hamid al-Bashar, the very next delivery, saw Nathan Hancock dismissed cheaply in the Test match once again, and had the Blues on the march to victory. Pineros would show some fight, however he was knocked over by Mark Pasterfield, and Lavin became Scott's 6th wicket for the Test match as he glided one through to the auto wiki. And when the first innings hero Michael Johnson was bowled for a duck, and his skipper followed not long after with another terrible stroke, the writing was all but on the wall for the Reds. Lower order cameos from Robert Leonard and debutant Ryan Schaefer added some respectability to the Reds' score. But the test match would come to an end in controversial fashion. Schaefer adjudged to have tickled one down the leg side, and the Blues had romped to a massive first test victory. So Rabih's 11 knocked over for 76 in the run chase, which could have been a lot worse had it not been for Robert Leonard and Ryan Schaefer down the lower order. Scott picked up 4 wickets in the second innings and 7 for the match in a man-of-the-match performance, and it was a record-winning margin for the Blues first up. So plenty of soul-searching to do for the men in red, as it was the Blues who took a 1-0 series lead. So on to a must-win second test match for the Reds. The Blues won the toss again and elected to bat first. And for the first time in WCG history, the Blues were unchanged heading into the second test match. And the one change for the Reds, Todd Lavin dropped for the debutant Tony Ibrahim. So with the series on the line, the Reds made their way out into the middle, knowing a far improved performance was required. And someone forgot to tell Tony they're fielding. And the Blues skipper opened up again, having made back-to-back half centuries in the first test match. But there would be no repeat this time around. Scott would chase a wide one to Robert Leonard to be dismissed for 5, and the Reds picked up the key wicket of the Blues skipper early on. The Reds would get an early roll on with the ball. Once again, Mark Pasterfield padding up, this time to Nathan Hancock. And after long deliberation from the umpire, he was given out. Although replay suggests once again that perhaps he was a little unlucky, as this one appeared to pitch outside the line of leg stump. Young Daniel Hancock would be dismissed cheaply once again, as the Blues slumped to 3 for 13 on the opening morning. And when Matt White was sharply caught by Ryan Schaefer in the covers, Brennan's 11 were 4 for 25. Again, the Blues would require the lower order to stand up and make handy contributions. Bolling and Merrifield went to work once again. However, when they were dismissed, the end of the innings came quickly. Elbasha went for 4, and Stepien went without scoring. The Reds' stellar morning with the ball was complete. So the Reds breathed new life into their Test Series hopes as they dismissed the Blues for 49 in their first innings. Only Gavin Merrifield and Matt White getting into double figures. A brilliant effort with the ball from the Reds. However, this was not the start they wanted with the bat. Pat McGregor's horror run in this Test Series continued. But that would bring the youngster Nathan Hancock to the crease. And after 2 failures in the first Test match, he would make his biggest contribution for the series with the bat to get Rabih's 11 back on track. However, he was dismissed in unusual and unfortunate fashion, caught one hand off the roof for 20. Hancock's departure brought about a procession of wickets. Tony Ibrahim, the debutant, dismissed second ball for a duck. Michael Johnson made his way to 14 before hitting a leading edge straight to Gavin Merrifield. And when Paneros was knocked over for a duck, the Reds had slumped to 5 for 35. But that would bring the Reds skipper to the crease, and in what was a rather unorthodox but effective innings of 23, propelled his side into a first innings lead before succumbing to Daniel Hancock over the fence. Josh Bolling picked up the massive wicket of Brian Schaefer for 1, with the Reds' hope of a big first innings lead diminishing, and those hopes were extinguished when Scott knocked over Leonard to end the innings. So Rabih's 11 unable to take full advantage of their first innings heroics with the ball. They were bowled out for 66 in their first innings and would take just a 17-run lead with them into the second innings. However, the procession of wickets at the top of the order continued for the Blues. Scott pushed himself down the order once again as Elbasha was knocked over by Paneros for 4. Johnson! Pasterfield failed once again at number 2, dismissed for a pair for the test match. And when young Daniel Hancock was dismissed with the very next delivery, brilliantly caught by Pat McGregor at short cover, the Blues had slumped to 3 for 7, still trailing the Reds by 10, and the Reds began to believe that their moment in this Test Series had come. But a middle to lower order revival once again for the Blues, firstly led by Matt White, who made his way to 20, Josh Bolling with a handy contribution of 11, and then that man again, Gavin Merrifield, who raced to 36, got the Blues' second innings back on track. But when Alex Stepien was the 7th man dismissed, the Blues' lead stood at just 67. Could history repeat itself for the Blues skipper? The answer, unfortunately for the Reds, was yes. The Blues skipper hit his third half century for the series to push the Brennan's 11 lead beyond the 100 mark, and once again proved to be the thorn in the Rabih's 11 side as their hopes began to diminish once again. And when Scott finally succumbed to Pat McGregor once again in the series for 51, it was another record run chase required. So the Blues bowled out in their second innings for 136, an overall lead of 119 runs. Lower order contributions saving the day once again. And could the Reds now create history to save their series? The answer initially was yes. The Reds' run chase began positively. Firstly, Robert Leonard at the top of the order hit 16. And then debutant Tony Ibrahim would hit 27 to have the Reds 1 for 43 and on track for a famous victory. However, when he was finally dismissed with a thunderbolt from Matt White, that would trigger an all too familiar collapse for the Reds. Firstly, Nathan Hancock, then George Paneros, and then Michael Johnson bowled by an absolute ripper from Alex Stepien. McGregor's poor series with the bat continued, knocked over for 4, and there would be no captain's heroics this time around. And despite the finger waving, El Basha had to depart for a globe. It was all down to Ryan Schaefer, the last man in, who needed 54 as he walked to the crease. And although he would begin positively, it would ultimately all prove too much. Schaefer hitting El Basha over the fence to cue wild celebrations for the Blues as they had secured another Test Series victory. So albeit a spirited performance for the Reds, it just ultimately was not enough. The Blues winning the big moments in the Test match to stave off the Reds' challenge and take a 2-0 series lead into the third Test match with a historic whitewash in their sights. So on to the third and final Test match. The Blues will win a third consecutive toss for the series and would elect to bat first. One change to the Blues lineup from the previous 2 Test matches. Jack Sullivan replaced the unavailable Gavin Merrifield. And as for the Reds, Todd Lavin returned to the lineup at the expense of George Paneros, dropped for today's Test match. So the last rites. The Reds entered the field of play once again, looking to avoid unwanted history at the WCG. However, the Blues skipper chose today of all days to really stamp his mark on the series. With the series all sewn up, he came out in aggressive fashion right from the word go to take the attack to the Reds bowlers and drive the nail into the coffin. In what were brilliant batting conditions at the WCG, Scott would take no mercy on the Reds bowlers, plundering to all parts of the arena to bring up his first century of the series. His opposition number coming in for particular treatment. Scott would finally be dismissed by Todd Lavin for a record score at the WCG of 120, which would prove to be his final act with the bat of the series. Young Daniel Hancock, who had a torrid time with the bat throughout the series, also came to the middle and played with freedom, on his way to his best score of the series of 24, throwing the bat at everything, literally. He would finally be dismissed, hitting a leading edge back to Michael Johnson to pick up his first wicket of the match. And then a collapse for the Blues. White dismissed cheaply by Schaefer. McGregor was rewarded for his toil with the wicket of El Basha. And when Stepien was caught by Schaefer in controversial fashion, The Blues' first innings was finally brought to an end. However, replays showed that the catch was fair. So a mammoth first innings total from the Blues, set up by their skipper's record knock of 120. The Blues bowled out for 170 in their first innings, and you would think all but assuring a series whitewash. The fears brought to fruition with another top-order collapse for the Reds. Alex stepped in with a devastating opening spell, picking up 2 wickets in the opening over to have the Reds reeling at 2 for none. Ibrahim would come to the crease and successfully negate the hat-trick delivery. However, his time in the middle would not last much longer. Clean bowl by Josh Bolling. And when Nathan Hancock holed out to Matt White at cover, the Reds were 4 for 10. And when Johnson fell for a duck, becoming Matt White's first victim of the test match, it was 5 for 10. But that would bring the skipper to the crease, and in a defiant last stand, he would register his highest score for the series, hitting the Blues to all parts of the arena with a message for his younger brother. In a gritty and determined knock, he frustrated the Blues bowlers, and despite the dire situation, wasn't afraid to taunt them. However, Matt White wasn't impressed. El-Basher pinned by a brute of a delivery from White, but he still stood undefeated. That was until he was controversially given out for 30 LBW and received a return message from his brother. Scott would knock over Schaefer to add the final nail in the coffin, and the Reds' first innings came to an end. So the Reds' dismal first innings coming to an end, only saved by their skipper, who made just about half of their score, as they were bowled out for 64, still trailing the Blues by 106, as they were asked to follow on. And if you thought the first innings was bad, you hadn't seen anything yet. McGregor's horror series with the bat came to an end. Ibrahim poked at a wide delivery from Stepien to be dismissed for a duck. And when Lavin decided to play tunnel ball, and Johnson didn't offer a stroke to Scott in the same over, the Reds had slumped to 4 for 11, as the replays would show that this was probably a good decision from the umpire, as the Reds' nightmare continued. However, the real drama was reserved for this moment. Enjoy.
Where? What's that?
He might have got it wrong, but he gave you out.
It's not might have got it wrong. It was nowhere near. It was nowhere near. It wasn't even hitting. Why did you see it? What'd you see? How do you my bat? How do you my bat? Is that my bat? Is that my fucking bat?
Rabih El-Basher with one of the all-time great blow-ups, dismissed for a duck. And moments later, the misery was complete. Schaefer skying an El-Basher delivery over the fence, as the Reds were bowled out for the lowest ever total at the WCG of 16. And the Blues had completed an historic whitewash. So a dismal end to a dismal campaign for the Reds, as they were bowled out for 16 in the second innings, the lowest ever total at the WCG, as they would suffer the biggest ever losing margin at the WCG in a test match, going down by an innings and 90 runs. So the whitewash complete for the Blues to win back-to-back series at the WCG. All pre-series bets were paid. Brendan Scott named man of the series, and the most dominant side ever assembled at the WCG had its legacy cemented.